Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So a friend of mine lived this past week, I think, one of those things that at least I, but probably lots of people have on their bucket list. She got to perform on stage in a huge arena in Ottawa with the Eagles. Like, what an unbelievable experience. I want to introduce you all again to Beth Sturdevant, who is a very accomplished musician. She's a really interesting person in a lot of other ways as well. She's got a fascinating personal story. But last week, she was on stage with the Eagles. Beth, tell us the story. How did this all come about?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show again. So how did this come about? Well, usually now that bands and orchestras and musicians are kind of slowly making their way back, post-pandemic, the touring bands are really going full production, which is fantastic. And so big bands like the Eagles or who else have I played with? Barbara Streisand, the people that can really afford to hire orchestras like to do that, because it really adds another element and dimension to the experience, right? So usually what happens with that is their managers will reach out to contractors in various countries where they're touring, and those contractors will then reach out to other contractors within each individual city, who then reaches out to their pool of contacts, musicians, to ask if they want to play. And of course, when I got contacted, I jumped right on board. Oh, you're muted.
You said, no, I don't want to play on stage.
Exactly.
That would be so terrible.
Exactly. So yeah, so I jumped on board, and then you do all the pre stuff. We had to sign an NDA and send us some music and kind of a breakdown of what to expect and scheduling and stuff. And then we had no rehearsal this time. That was the first time I'd ever done that, but the music was super easy. You don't really need one. So you get the music beforehand, you show up, they give you a rundown, and then you go on stage and you play.
Did it give you instructions as to what to wear? Do they provide the costume?
Oh, yeah.
What?
No, it's always black, but whether it's formal black, semi-formal, sleeves, no sleeves, they'll kind of give those segues. Yeah, those instructions. I don't know if I can share this, but I had a really funny story about actually the concert clothes and clothing. I once played with Harry Connick Jr. at the Toronto Jazz Festival years ago, about 12 years ago. And that one we did have a rehearsal before, about an hour before the show. So I showed up. I played with Harry Connick Jr. I knew him from my New York days because I did the run of Pajama Game, which he was the star of when I was there on Broadway. And so it was nice to see him again, all of that. So after we rehearse, I go to my bag to get my black clothes, and I forgot them completely. I had my shoes, and I didn't have enough time to go back where I was staying to get them. Thankfully, another violinist had a nice tank top that I could borrow, but the stagehands, it was so funny. I had jeans on. You can't go on stage with jeans. So what they did is they took black stage cloth and they wrapped it around my jeans and tied it behind my back with pink duct tape. So it kind of looked like a little bustle. And it was hilarious. And even so we told Harry, and he came on stage, and in the middle of his show, he actually made me stand up and model it in front of everyone and told everyone about what had happened and that he knew me and yada, yada, yada. But
so tell us a little bit about your music career. So what instrument do you play? And you played quite professionally for quite a while, did you not?
Yeah, absolutely. I played the cello. I started when I was 9. I grew up in Ottawa. Both my parents are classical musicians, professional. They played in essentially the National Symphony of Canada. It's called the National Arts Centre Orchestra. And so I did that throughout my high school, went to arts high school. Then I went to prestigious arts boarding school in Michigan to finish high school. And then I followed my career to go to conservatories and universities in the States, studying music. And then I went to Banff. There's a beautiful art center there. I went there after university to kind of focus on practicing and figuring out where I wanted to go next. Then I lived in Greece for a little bit. And then I actually quit cello for a year and I moved to Toronto and I did personal training, completely sidebar.
Personal training, like fitness training.
Fitness training.
Really?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I don't say I quit cello, but I took a break. And then as fate would have it, got called back. So one of the contractors I was mentioning in Canada, he's since passed, but he reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do a touring gig in the States with a Disney show. It's called On the Record. They made it specifically for touring.
Right.
So it was based out of New York City, tour, multiple cities within a year. You live on the road, and I said yes. So there I was back in the music world, touring with this Disney show for a year. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, where do I want to go? So I decided to move to New York City because I had contacts there, and it seemed the most natural thing to do. So I moved to New York City, and literally within 1 month of moving there, I got hired to play the solo cello part in that production with Harry Connick Jr. on Broadway.
Incredible.
Yeah, and so it was kind of like this whirlwind from that, and then I got contracted to play in the orchestra with Barbra Streisand on her tour. So it was just it was amazing. When I got to New York, it was like it just felt like home, and that kind of environment of playing. I played with orchestras. I love symphonic music. I love playing with orchestras, but there's something about the diversity of being a freelance musician in New York City and in LA and playing different things and with different people that is just very powerful. Yeah.
Why did you give it up?
I'm not gonna say I gave it up so much as life took a left turn. And my fiance at the time in New York City that I was living with, we had gotten pregnant, and I had gotten pregnant. And then at the time he left me while I was pregnant, 5 months pregnant. And I'd just been in New York for about a year and a half. And I couldn't at the time imagine being a single mother in New York City by myself, budding career in, just starting out, essentially, with no support. In the States, there's no support there's no support, period, as far as for single parents. So I moved back to Ottawa, just be with my parents for the help. He and I reconciled. I moved back to New York, lived there for a year. But the problem with the freelance scene, it's very fast, right? You have to be on the forefront of those contractors' minds when stuff comes in. So all of a sudden I was out, and then I come back in and I'm not on everybody's minds. I hadn't done the grunt work of really playing the smaller gigs to really work up into like I said, I went right into a Broadway show, which is not usual when you're new in the city. Usually you have to sub, get to know people, kind of work your way up. So I hadn't done the smaller things to really fill in the darker spots when you don't have those bigger gigs, like playing with Streisand and stuff. So it was really dry, and then, so that year I didn't have as much work, but I started to slowly start getting back into it, getting calls to play on different Broadway shows to sub in for a cellist. And then he did it again. Then he cheated on me. I was pregnant with our second son at the time. He did it again, cheated on me, left me. And at that point, I just decided to pack up and move back to Ottawa full time. So it was like, and Ottawa's different. It's a different scene. I was teaching cello. I became a Suzuki music teacher. I was even the director of a music school. But to me, that's not my passion. I even went back to university, got another degree in education. Because at that time, when you're struggling to kind of redefine yourself and figure out who you are, you're like, well, I guess I'll try this, I'll try that,
Yeah.
All that stuff. So I did that. It wasn't that great. I didn't love it, but you do it because you have to do what you have to do. So it's kind of a process of unwinding from who you thought you were and then rebuilding and remembering who you truly are. And so that, and what I do now is
unwinding from who you thought you were,
mm-hmm.
and then a process of trying to figure out who you really are.
Yeah, becoming who you really are. Remembering, I should say.
Remembering who you really are.
Because here's the thing. Playing the cello is a very prestigious, unique thing. And everybody, when you say you're a classical cellist, I mean, especially cello, everybody loves, I've never met anyone who's like, oh, I hate that instrument, or, it's not my favorite. Everybody loves the cello because it resonates with your heart, right? It's like the heart, the frequencies actually resonate in your heart center. So it really,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So it's like the sound of love, we'll say.
The cello is the sound of love.
Yeah.
It resonates with your heart.
That's actually actors, sometimes they'll do an exercise where they'll talk in different points of their body to, to give different inflections and tones in their voice. So like you can talk up in your mind, which is which they refer to as the violin voice. And then the throat, which they refer to as the viola, which is the bigger violin, a little bit deeper sound. The cello is the heart center. So when you talk down in your heart, it's more grounded, it's deeper. And then the double bass is obviously down in the root, down in the root structures, really the bowels of who we are.
Bowels of who we are is
the double bass. I'm sure some double bass players might not appreciate that analogy.
It's a great description. Thank you for that. I didn't ever think that through about the brain, the throat, the heart, and the the instruments. What must have been just an incredible experience to be like, I grew up with the Eagles. I love the Eagles, and Barbra Streisand, some of the others that you played with, undoubtedly Barbra Streisand would have been amazing as well.
Oh,
in your hometown, that would have been a lot of fun.
That
We're going to take a break. We're going to take for some messages and be back in just 2 minutes and hear more about the adventure that Beth Sturdevant had playing the cello on stage with the Eagles just last week in Ottawa. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm having a really enjoyable sort of, I wish I could put this on my bucket list kind of conversation with Beth Sturdevant, who is a unbelievably accomplished performer. She plays the cello. She's played it around the world or around North America. Around the world. You played in Greece as well. So you played around the world. And she's played with Barbra Streisand. And last week she had the opportunity to play with the Eagles on stage in Ottawa. What an unbelievably fun experience. And so I just thought it would be really interesting, Beth, if you could just share with us a couple of the experiences that you had on that stage and what it was like to be up there. What was it like?
It's really hard to describe how exhilarating it is to be on stage with 20,000 people screaming and cheering and just having that energy and that excitement. So this particular experience, there was a string orchestra for some of the songs. We played 6 songs and we were placed on a platform that would go up and down. So that way, when the Eagles were singing, we could go onto this platform, get into position, and then we would be it would rise up for the songs that we would play. Then we would go off and go back to the room where we were waiting for the next songs. And that's super fun because when you're coming up and then people see you, especially for the first time, it's just, again, it's like another added element of amazement, to have an actual string orchestra on there. It was very tight, the spacing, very tight. So you could hardly move. So we were kind of in 2 rows. I was at the very end of the second row. And funny enough, my stand partner, the cellist I was sitting with, cellists play, so we'll do the fingered notes with our left hand and play with the bow on the right hand, generally. He does it opposite. And I've never played with somebody who plays fingered right hand, bow hand, left hand. So it was a little bit of a mind twist there because he's going opposite direction, but still fun. Yeah, so you come up and you see the Eagles and you hear them and they sounded amazing and the crowd is cheering. And then one of the songs, there was a choir that sang with us, which again adds another element of amazement and
visually texture. It looks incredible with the Eagles in front and then the orchestra and then the choir in behind. It must have been, the sound must have been spectacular.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so spectacular. It really is.
What are some of the favorite songs that the Eagles sang that you got to sing, that you got to play?
None of the ones that are my favorite.
Now, in one time,
sorry.
In one time, it would appear that you were on the big screen, so that the cameraman focused in on you, and that must have been wild for you and your friends.
Well, you don't see it, right? Because the screen's behind you. And actually, we got in trouble from the stage crew, big time. I've never actually dealt with management that was so high strung, but any case, so you can't see what's behind you. You can't see the cameras, but you know that they're all around. Yeah, so my friends, I knew a lot of, I made a post telling people that if they were going to the Eagles concert to be on the lookout for me for some of the songs. So throughout the whole concert, I'm getting all these messages, texts and everything of people taking videos and pictures. And my friend Lisa took this shot and it's incredible. It's like, it's such a great shot.
It is a great shot. And obviously your blonde hair just sort of glows in the light.
Yeah. It's, I'm very grateful for this shot. And it was really nice because you don't get to see these perspectives normally, right? Being on stage, you don't see what the audience sees. You don't feel what they feel, so to speak, because you're in it. So it's really nice to have that experience too.
What's it? Is it dramatically different? You said really exciting being on stage in front of 20,000 people. You know, a typical orchestra would be a couple thousand, correct? If you're
no, typical orchestra would be a couple hundred, and it's different because when you're playing a symphony with a symphony or any type of, you know, traditional classical setting, it's very structured and almost pretentious in a sense, because it's like, and I think that's where the disconnect is with so many people who aren't brought up in that environment of learning what classical music is and why it's so great. You're kind of intimidated by the fact that, okay, you come to these performances and you're not allowed to clap here, but you can clap here. And, you know, you have to be very serious. And whereas when you're playing with a band, there are no rules, right? It's just the energy. And the more that the audience gives, the more that the band plays, because it's energy. Energy breeds energy. So it's so much more, even though the music from our perspective is very bland and boring as far as performing, it's so fun because of the energy, the excitement, the people. Like, it's just such a different experience.
So that's interesting. What you're saying is that that the band gets energy from the audience, and I guess people have always said that, and you hear it, but I guess I've never really believed it. Where you're saying that if an audience is sitting on their hands, a band will play differently than if they're up dancing and singing and going crazy.
100%, 100%. When it's in those kind of environments, in a classical music setting, no, because classical musicians are very, I'll say, set in their ways.
Yeah. So
that would be frowned upon. Even though in my world, I would love that. You play Shostakovich Symphony and people are, you know, fired up. It's just two completely different worlds.
What an incredible experience. You know, the other thing, and this wouldn't be applicable to you, obviously, given that you play the cello, but I've always wondered what it's like for an artist when they put the microphone toward the audience and the whole audience sings their song, their words, their lyrics, and knows them as well as the artist does. So that obviously they they're in love with that music. That must be a real rush.
For sure. For sure. To be able to share that experience and to know how much it's touched people's lives and how much they love it. That's what music is all about, in my opinion, is this. It's the, other than math, the universal language, right? It's what bypasses the conscious mind and gets to the subconscious mind and gets right to the heart of our emotions and our experiences and our memories. So to mix that with the energetic exchange of whatever it is you're trying to create, or the environment has the potential to be extremely powerful.
Is there someone that you'd love to play on stage with?
I love playing with Harry Connick Jr. because he's just fun. He's fun. He's super humble. It's always different. I mean, Barbra Streisand's just an experience. It's just an experience.
And were you on tour with her? So you went to several places?
Yep. We toured for 2 months across North America.
When was this?
That was in 2006, and there's even a movie that was made. We did a video in Florida, and yeah, that was an amazing experience.
I went to see
that was a full orchestra.
I went to see Barbra Streisand in 2019 in Madison Square Gardens, and like a year before COVID, and we all were closed down. It was one of the last big concerts I went, and I've only been to a handful of concerts in Madison Square Gardens, so it was really unbelievable to watch it there. And I had front row balcony seats, so I had an incredible view. So I wasn't close, but I had an unbelievably unobstructed view of the stage.
Amazing.
And she was amazing, and the night was amazing. And it was interesting that they pointed out, or she pointed out from the stage, that the Clintons were there, and the mayor of New York was there, and a whole bunch of the stars of New York came out, both political and artistic as well, and business came out to watch Barbra Streisand, and her voice was still unbelievably strong and resonant. It was really one of the better concerts I've ever been to.
And that's the thing. I'd never been a Barbra Streisand fan or really knew much about her until I had the opportunity of playing with her. And then when she first sang, I was like, oh, okay.
This lady has a voice.
It's legit. Like, she's really talented. Okay. Kind of excuse the diva personality when you hear that, but yeah, when we tour the major, like LA, New York, Chicago, the people, you'd see all the stars in the front row, and then they would come backstage, and that was always fun because you'd always look in, okay, who's here today? Bill Clinton came in, the whole auditorium, the whole arena, Madison Square Garden, stood up and cheered. Oprah came, that same thing. It's fun. It's really fun.
What is it about being in a crowd? Is it some communal experience that we want to have? Listening to the music in your home on a CD player or something like that is far better music from a music quality standpoint. And listening to them live in a small setting would be wonderful. It would be fantastic. But there's something about being in a huge crowd. What is it?
It's a great question. It comes back to that connection, that energy, right? Being with people and having an experience together, regardless of your differences. You're all there to experience something that you love in this moment of celebration of whatever it is, and then you could be sitting next to somebody who has the complete opposite views of you, of everything, belief systems, but yet you're sharing this moment in time where you're both so excited and happy and feeling joy, like all those roots of what we are as humans. And that's the power of music, is it can offer us those, and to get that in a crowd of 20,000 people. I mean, that is true. Again, I always say power. I'm saying power a lot, but that's healing, right? That's community and celebration. And I mean, we kind of, sometimes you'll get the odd heckler and stuff like that, but for the most part.
But yeah, we don't know those people. We don't know them. We're just there with them. And so how do you have community and commune with people that you don't know? I've seen these pictures I'm not sure if you've seen of late of Coldplay's tour, and they're giving people bracelets that have got little lights shining, and so you get the whole, stadium. It's not arenas; it's a stadium tour. So 60,000 people, all shining a light at a specific time, and people love it. People love being part of this production where, there's synchronized light bulbs, effectively. And so, they're not volunteering to do it. It's a computer generated thing on their wrist that's doing it, but people go nuts over it. So there's something about being part of a communal experience, that brings people together, and people will describe it as, one of their better experiences in life.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Absolutely. It's just, again, coming to the core of who we are and what makes us happy and brings us joy, and being part of this production and feeling. And I think that's a lot of the people that I knew that were in the arena for the Eagles concert were so happy and excited to see me on stage, because here they have this connection
To someone on stage.
in some way, right? And it really, it's just so fun, because it brings us out of our problems. It brings us out of the mundane complacency of life, and our problems and struggles and all of that stuff. And it's really invigorating, really fun experience to share.
So Beth, you've gone through some challenges, a broken relationship, changing careers. You said that you had to figure out who you were and who you wanted to be. How'd you do all that? And how do you stay so strong?
Well, it's the hero's journey. We're all trying to find our way back to that inner holy grail that's within us, right? That purpose, that greater purpose that sometimes we look for externally in these experiences. But how do we take those experiences and bring them internally so that we carry that throughout our life? So we're not looking for, what's the next hit? What's the next hit? What's the next hit? To make us feel those things when that comes from within, right? So I wasn't feeling that, and having that experience of being abandoned, pregnant, walking away from my career, all of those things, while it was awful and I never would want to experience it again, I am so grateful for it, because it catapulted me on this path towards understanding who I am, what I'm capable of, and really facing the darker parts of myself that I didn't want to perhaps look at before, that may have caused me to do things that weren't really becoming of my true nature, of who I was. So it's kind of, you go on this journey of self-discovery, really going into the belly of the whale, so to speak, of trying to understand, well, okay, this is me, this isn't me, who am I, right? So there was that period from New York until 2016, when I was really kind of not very healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Even though I was going to the gym, taking care of myself, I was going to therapy, I'm looking for all these things to kind of help me get out, climb out of that cave, or I'm going to say not even want to go into the cave, right? Help me kind of figure out, how can I change without actually changing? You know what I mean? How can I heal and help myself without actually healing and helping myself? So it's kind of this dance around the cave, so to speak. It wasn't until, even though that breakup with the father of my children was hard, it wasn't enough, we'll say, to really make me dive deep. It was the breakup with somebody that I loved deeper than I'd loved anybody, including, we'll say, myself, that I had a stronger connection with, that I'd met in 2014. When I started to react and act in ways that was completely different than I'd ever acted before, because of what things that happened, right? Because when we don't resolve and heal trauma and experiences, it compounds. They all add up, right? And they start to cause us to behave in certain ways, or do things that we might not have done previously. So all that to say is, in that relationship, I would act in certain ways that I'm going to say kind of fulfilled the prophecy that I thought, well, he's going to leave me subconsciously. He's going to leave me anyway, because
You were almost manifesting that he was going to leave you.
100%. Even though you deeply love that person, like love that person, want to be with them, part of you is like, well, I need to prove that I'm not worthy enough to be with.
You have to prove that you're not worthy enough?
Subconsciously, yeah. There's a part of our subconscious mind that self-worth piece that is like, I'm not worthy, I'm not worth being loved.
But you're beautiful, you're accomplished, you're a professional cellist, you're articulate, you're educated. Why aren't you worthy?
Because self-worth is the biggest wound that everybody has to struggle with in their lives, the biggest wound. And regardless of what you look like or what you do, that's still there. And then when our experiences validate that or create a deeper connection with that lack of self-worth, because I've had traumas, I've had many experiences that have kind of pulled me away from that. We come into this world bright, beautiful, full of light and love, but then things happen and it takes us away and it dampens that light that we have. And so even though on the outside you may look like you've got it all together and perfect, you may be acting in ways that are not true to that. And so while I felt like a strong warrior, independent woman, when I'd have my period or PMS, or when I'd have one or two drinks where all of a sudden you don't have control, all of that stuff inside that you haven't resolved comes out in different ways. And so when I say you basically become prophecy of your own worst nightmares, then you're like, oh, see, I knew it. I knew I wasn't good enough. I knew he would leave me. Yeah. So it was that moment when I knew, because I distinctly remember thinking, but I'm not that person. Why am I doing this? Why is this happening? I am not that insecure person. I am not that XYZ. How can I lose somebody that I love this much because of things that I'm deep down, I don't really feel that I am. So that's where you finally.
Why did that relationship break up?
Over infidelity again? No, not at all. It's very layered because, again, I was overly emotional. Sometimes I would react. I'd become jealous at moments.
Right.
When I'd never been like that before in my life, ever. So again, all that compounded experience, traumas and bad experiences were finally manifesting in that way. And the universe has a funny way. Okay, it's like class. Okay, well, you didn't learn this time. We're going to have to up the stakes. Okay, well, are you going to graduate now? Okay, no, you're not learning. Well, we need to really create an impactful situation for you to finally learn. And you get to these moments where it's like literally do or die. You're either going to climb out or crawl back in.
Well, this time you really learned.
Well, this time it was like, yeah, it was basically, I have to go into that cave and dig myself out and become my own hero, or I won't survive.
And are you your own hero today?
100%.
You're my hero. You got to play on stage with the Eagles. You're completely my hero. We're going to take a final break, and come back in just 2 minutes with Beth Sturdevant, who is a really interesting person. And she got to play on stage with the Eagles last week, the cello, which is her instrument. And what an amazing experience. Stay with us, everybody. We're going to be right back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Beth Sturdevant, who is it a celloist? Is that the right description? Who plays the cello? What's the...
Yeah. A cellist.
A cellist, of course, a cellist, I apologize, which is, as she's described, the instrument that is the heart sound, because it resonates with the heart, unlike the violin or the viola that are the brain and the throat, or the double bass that is the roots. The cello is the sound that resonates with the heart. I love that description. Last week, she got to play on stage with the Eagles, and what an unbelievably amazing experience that must have been to been on stage with the Eagles and playing. And one of her friends captured a picture of her actually right there on the big screen, right behind the Eagles, performing. Just got to be a bucket list for me, if not for a lot of people. When I was a teenager, I was a singer in a band. They kicked me out shortly after my voice changed, so I didn't continue along on that. But Beth, that was one of the dreams I had, was to be someone like you up on stage and performing in that kind of experience. You've found some other outlets. You've been very successful as a cellist, but now I saw that you were all in huge makeup a week or two on social media, and you run some special programs for females to try to find out who they are and find their inner warrior. Tell us a little bit about those experiences as well, if you could.
Absolutely. So I always liken it to, the hero's journey. I don't know if you've ever read Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero's Journey, but we're all on this quest to remembering who we are. And by that meaning, who we are aside from our ego, aside from our traumas, aside from the things that have happened to kind of pull us away from the heart of us as individuals. And so all of our lives, it's kind of this it's the same story. We're all living the same story: experience, trauma, loss, fall from grace, all these moments that are there to help, as much as people don't like to think of it this way, but to help us grow, right? That happen for us, not to us, if we're able to use it in such a way. It's just different people, different scenarios, different events, but the theme is always the same. And it's coming back to that hero, becoming the hero of our own lives, saving ourselves, really owning that inner warrior.
Lives, saving ourselves.
Exactly. Becoming that warrior that we need to be to do that. So I started workshops in 2016. I'd had in deep meditation, in trance, I'd had a vision of this, what I had to do in this gigantic center that eventually is starting to formulate now. But you have to slowly start the process. So I offered workshops for women to really strengthen themselves on the inside and externally, using weapon darts, so swords, shields, but also combining that with mindfulness, meditation, things like that. So there's that balance of inner strength, outer strength. Why the sword? Because it's so symbolic of everything: power, strength, chivalry, honor, courage, all those things that we really admire and need in our own lives. So I did that for a while. Then I opened up my own business about a little over a year before the pandemic hit. We did not have very supportive tenants. Sorry, not tenants.
Landlords.
Yes, thank you. Landlords at the time. So we were not able to stay afloat during all of the closures, but it's fine. There was no part of me that regretted any of it. So we did close, but that was the seed. It was like planting the seed, so to speak.
And you run these sessions today, these seminars?
Right now, I just focus on my own personal one-on-one work with clients as a healer.
And if people want to check that out and potentially hire you for that, is there a website that they can go to?
Yep, they can go to my website, bethsturdevant.com.
bethsturdevant.com, and if you follow Beth, you'll see some incredible pictures of her and her warriors, sometimes in makeup, sometimes in costume, doing some incredible things. And I'd love to try it, but I guess I'm not a female, so I'm not allowed. But I think it would be a lot of fun to get dressed up as a warrior and try to find your inner warrior. And I think that this idea about finding your hero, finding that passion that you've got, finding out who you wanted to be when you were a teenager or a kid again, and not forgetting it. Because so many of us get into the routine, don't we? And we forget who we really wanted to be and what we really wanted to achieve. And I think, Beth, you've reminded me of one of those things by just your experience on stage in Ottawa with the Eagles. And you've reminded me several times before, talking about being a warrior and finding your passion. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
That's our show for tonight. Beth Sturdevant got to play on stage with the Eagles. What an unbelievably fascinating experience. With 20,000 people in the audience, she had friends take pictures of her. She got the experience of playing those songs, even though they may not have been the most challenging songs she's ever played, but had 20,000 people watch her on stage rise out from behind the Eagles. And as they came up, and then a choir appearing in behind them, must have been an incredible experience. One of those things that, you know, Beth, even if we can't all live, I can live and other people can live vicariously through you. So thank you for sharing that experience with us. Amazing.
Thank you for having me.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online. Beth, even from Ottawa, at www.saga960am.ca. Good night, everybody.